All right. If you are someone who is pivoting, right, and you are trying to figure out what to offer, right, this is going to be your episode, whether you are changing niches or changing positioning or audiences, or maybe you're starting a completely new business. No matter what kind of pivot you're making, this one is for you. What I want to be able to do is to give you three things to get clear about that will make figuring out what your offer is much, much easier. Okay. All right. So there are lots of decisions to be made when you are pivoting, lots and lots. Who are you serving? Offers, pricing, positioning, platform, just like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But one of the biggest ones is offers for obvious reasons. Right. And so I want to help you avoid turning a 3-month pivot into a 3-year transition, because this is the thing that I see often happen is someone decides to pivot, right? They are unsatisfied with one or more areas of their business, or they're just ready to move on to their next thing, like whatever the reason is, but the transition becomes much longer or harder than they planned, right? So that's what we're trying to avoid here. Part of the reason why that happens is because of decision fatigue, right? If we're making lots of decisions in a fairly short period of time, it's easy to get overwhelmed or tired. Then you add to the fact that there is a fear of getting it wrong and wasting time, that seasoned entrepreneurs tend to have more than beginner entrepreneurs, distractions, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So that's number one I want to help you avoid. The other thing that I really want to help you avoid is the creation hamster wheel, right? Another thing that I often see when people are pivoting is the number of landing pages and lead magnets and websites and content and offers and creating all of these things either from scratch or tweaking them and then redoing them again. So we're going to avoid all of that by answering some of these questions, right? Because here's what I really want you to hear if you don't catch anything else from this podcast episode. The number one way you avoid some of these hamster's wheels is by getting clear on things sequentially, right? Many things compound in business. So if you're not clear on 1 and 2, then it's going to be pretty difficult to achieve success with 3. Okay. So for example, if your lead magnet, let's say you created a lead magnet, it will not convert, right? After all of your time, energy, money, right? That you've done, whether it's PDF and podcasts or webinars or whatever, it won't actually convert if you haven't chosen the right audience. And here's the thing, clarity is not binary. It's not, did I choose did I choose an audience or not? That's a binary question, yes or no. It is no. To what degree have I aligned my audience with my lead magnet, right? That's the key. It's not just about choosing, which many of us have done. We've chosen the niche, we've chosen the audience, we've chosen the different pieces. We're pretty seasoned business owners, so we understand that there's a lot of decisions again, right? But getting good at choosing, which is really just aligning, is like a whole different area altogether, okay? I'm not going to talk about aligning in this episode, right? If that's something you feel like you need help with, check out the Helper School. We do all of that work in there, okay? So let's get into it. Here are the 3 things that, if you're clear on them, will make choosing your offer much easier, okay? Number 1, what's the problem that your brand solves, okay? Not the offer that you're trying to figure out. What is the problem that your brand solves? Now, if you've done positioning work, then this will be an easy answer and you can quickly move on to number 2. But most people do messaging work, but they don't do positioning work. And when you have not positioned yourself, if you haven't gotten clear on your positioning, then it can be pretty difficult to answer this question. But it is a prerequisite to making sure that you're creating offers that align with how you want to be seen in the marketplace, because the ultimate goals of your offer is obviously revenue, but also to be positioned in the market however you want to be positioned. And while there are many things that help us do that, one of the main ways is claiming a problem, because that's the way our brains work, right? One of the things that we talk a lot about in our programs is how to be able to build a brand based on psychology. That's the beauty of me being a therapist, but then also having multiple certifications on the branding and figuring out how to infuse the two, because our brains recognize pain and the tension that pain creates in us creates an open loop. And when there is an open loop happening in our brain, it then causes us to look for solutions, right? That's what we want. We want the person who's looking for solutions. So while it's great to know the promise or the outcome, that your brand is promoting, it is not the same as the problem, right? The problem and the promise are different. Okay. So yes, there are many problems that you could solve. And yes, there are many problems that your audience has. But what is the specific problem that you've chosen to solve? And pro tip, it can be big, but it cannot be broad. So for example, weight loss, right? Weight loss, if let's say you're a health coach, okay? Weight loss is a broad goal. That won't work. But you could do big, which is, let me think. Let's say I'm going to help you lose 100 pounds in 6 months. And so that's a big goal, right? So think big, but not broad, okay? It's also how would I say that? The other thing that I think is important as you're trying to figure out what problem your brand solves is that it's different than the products that you sell, but it is connected to the products that you sell. For example, Starbucks sells coffee, right? That's the product. But the problem that they're solving is community, right? I've read multiple books from the co-founders of the co-founders of Starbucks, and they were very clear on the problem that they were trying to solve, which went into how they sell the product, right? We think it's about product, but really it's about the problem that the brand is solving, which is often different, right? I mentioned Nike because that was my other example, whereas Nike sells athletic apparel, but that's not the problem that they solve, right? The problem that they solve is feeling like a champion, right? Notice the nuance there. Again, so if you're a health coach helping women, let's say over 40, lose weight, what are the problems that nag at them repeatedly? Because from there flows lots of other offer ideas, i.e. smaller problems, okay? Also, pro tip, when you've done North Star work, this becomes an easy answer, okay? All right, number 2. The second thing that you want to get clear about is your customer journey, okay? This is how you build offers that actually bridge to the next offer, which is huge because it decreases acquisition costs. We do not just want random offers and then we have to start over, new launch, new clients. No, we want retention. But in order to have retention, we'd have to build our offers in a particular way. Without this, your offers are just more random and you have to keep finding new clients. And when you are over 40, friend, okay, we are building smarter and simpler because we are out of hustle mode, okay? But in order to do that, it means that we have to be more strategic, right? When we first started our business, we didn't know all of these things, right? And now we do. And so to be able to incorporate some of the things that we've learned over 5, 10, 15, however many years you've been in business, okay? Your customer journey allows you to be strategic, okay? So when I say customer journey, what I'm really just talking about is the step-by-step journey that your clients go through naturally to reach the outcome or the transformation that they're shooting for, right? Again, this is not the step-by-step journey they take in your offers or in your brand. No, this has nothing to do with your brand, right? This is what is the natural steps that they take, right, to reach the outcome that they're shooting for. Okay, so if I'm in real estate, let's say I'm a real estate agent, and it's what's the outcome that they're shooting for, number one? Okay, they're trying to buy a house, but what kind of house? Because what kind of house determines part of their process. Maybe they're not trying to buy a house. Maybe they're trying to buy a commercial property, right? Like the outcome that they're shooting for is where you start. And then you need to map out the natural path. Because what we do as entrepreneurs, we know the expert path. And that's not the one I'm referring to. Okay, so notice the subtle nuance there. But having your customer journey allows you to turn those steps that they would naturally take into offers that align. Okay. Hopefully you're catching that. When you know this, you know what to offer. And then once you know what to offer, then you can move on to positioning the offer, creating the offer, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so then the last thing that if you get clear about will help you actually decide what to offer is knowing what segment of your market are you focused on, right? The more specific or clear you are about who you serve, the easier it is to choose the offer, right? Most people have identified their target market, right? That's usually, we've definitely done that many times. Sometimes we've even identified possible market segments, right? But rarely have we laid out the profile for a specific segment of our market, right? But when you have, everything gets much clearer, right? Every single thing gets much clearer, including what to offer them, right? So when I say target market, which is the thing you probably already know, think of the 2 or maybe 3 words that you use to describe your audience: single moms, Black women, agency owners, et cetera, et cetera. That is not what I'm referring to. That's not a market segment. That's your target market. That's too broad, right? That's a great place to start. But when we start talking about creating offers, it isn't as helpful, right? When we start talking about market segments, what you're going to do is to take the 2 words or the 3 words that you use to describe your audience and add either a stage, a problem, an age, desire, et cetera, right? For example, Black women battling diabetes, or agency owners with no employees, or single moms that want to build a 7-figure business. I don't know. This begins to get us a little closer. We're still not there. That's like level 2. Level 3 is when you actually have the profile, right? This is your audience in detail. And I'm not talking about the demographics, and demographics and psychographics are great. Include those too, right? Because it also informs what you offer. But from an offer perspective, at least in choosing the offer, I'm really talking about symptoms, mindsets, experiences, things like that. Many people have at least one of these, a target market. Sometimes they even have 2, but rarely do people have 3. And when you have all 3, it becomes easier to know what to sell, right? And when you have all 3 and they actually align with your overall positioning, it becomes really easy to know what to sell. Okay. So I hope this was helpful. Again, the 3 things that I want you to get clear about is: what problem does your brand solve? Not what problem does your offer solve, right? Have you laid out your customer journey? And what segment of your market are you focused on? Okay. If you need help with any of these things, again, check out Helper School. You could also DM the word journey on Facebook, right? We will have an automation set up. And if not, we'll still send it to you before the automation is set up to shoot you the details, the image that we have just around creating your customer journey.